What's up, everyone? Aaron Nagler here, PackersNews.com, live on Facebook. It's July. Means we're one step closer to training camp. Obviously, it's July 4th week, however, which means things are very quiet on the news front. That doesn't mean there isn't stuff for you to peruse at PackersNews.com. Make sure you check out the latest in our opponent preview series with the San Francisco 49ers. The Detroit Lions were up over the weekend, and I believe we have the LA Rams on deck. So tons of stuff for you to check out. Make sure you're checking PackersNews.com throughout the day for all the latest on the green and gold. And hello to everyone in the comments section. Nice to see everybody. Stacy, good afternoon. Chris, hello. With the hand wave emoji, always lovely. Where's Aaron's contract? Josh, it's currently being worked on, most likely, if you're talking about his extension. He has a contract, of which there are 2 years left on said deal. So there's really no hurry. I don't understand why I get this question like every single day during the off season when there are no deadlines for it to be done. It'll get done. Patience, people. I thought you were going to announce QB1's deal. Nope. Would have put that in the header and probably gotten a few more eyeballs on the video if I had. What are your thoughts on the Niners? Good question. I think Shanahan's a really good offensive mind, and I think Garoppolo's the real deal. I'm not ready to say he's one of the top quarterbacks in the league or anything, but I do think that he is going to put up some decent numbers with Shanahan calling the plays. I do wonder about their skill position players, although I really like the addition of Jerick McKinnon. And on defense, I think it's gonna be some growing pains there overall, but I think they're going to be a formidable foe. I think that's a game the Packers should win. I think the Packers actually match up pretty well with them, especially on the offensive side of the ball. But any given Sunday, we all know how it is. But I think the Niners, it's going to be tough with the Rams in their division for them to get into the playoffs. But I think if there's a team that can do it, they're the ones. How important do you think it is to sign a veteran wide receiver? Not terribly important, Matthew. I think we talked about this a little bit on Friday, but the Packers are always going to value the experience and the reps they're going to get those younger guys in camp, especially over bringing in someone who doesn't know the system and having to get them up to speed. You're going to be taking development and time away from those guys that you've invested all that time in the spring in. They're always going to favor the youth of their program. Now, that said, I'm not going to say it's completely out of bounds, the idea that they might go looking for someone, or they might make someone a call, whether that's Des Bryant or whoever. But I tend to think, unless there's a spate of injuries, they're gonna stick with what they have. Great question, Kevin. If Ha Clinton-Dix shows signs of life early on in the season, do the Packers try and extend him in season? I tend to doubt it. I think they'll let it play out. I mean, barring some kind of rebound that makes him look like an all-pro, which I don't expect, I don't see Ha Clinton-Dix pricing himself out of Green Bay. I do think they'll let the season play out, and I think, obviously, the better he plays, the better it is for his contract prospects, but I would be surprised if they extended him in season. Now, that said, when you look at who's up next year and what comes off the books, whether it's Cobb's Cobb's going into his last year of his deal, Clay Matthews is going into the last year of his deal. There are a couple other guys too. They're going to have a large amount of cap space come available next season. So I don't think they really have to get ahead of anything the way they did with Devontae Adams and Corey Linsley. That doesn't mean that they're completely kick it to the curb, but I don't think there's any kind of incentive for them to get something done sooner. I think they'll want to see Ha Clinton-Dix kind of bounce back a year-long campaign before they kick things off. Of course, I say all that, now watch them sign him to an extension first day of camp. How many boxes of Kleenex do I stock for the season? I don't know. November and December get awfully cold. Coming to LA this year? That's TBD, actually. There are a few games I may miss this season, but I'm hoping to, definitely. How many wide receivers do you think they keep? I think it all comes down to how the rookies play on special teams. I think that's going to determine a large part of the wide receiver depth chart. We talked about that on Friday as well. You know, the path to the roster for these young guys is on special teams. You know, you're not going to be able to be on the roster if you're not contributing there, because you know, the Packers just can't afford to keep those kind of numbers and not have guys who are contributing elsewhere when they're sitting on the bench for most of, you know, the offensive time from scrimmage. Thanks, Peter. Very nice of you to say. Any news on the Cobb injury? No, nothing yet, Ricardo. I'm sure we'll hear something from Cobb when camp opens, but that's obviously about 3 or 4 weeks away. You probably won't hear much on the Cobb front until then. Do you think they actually use Graham unlike Bennett? That's a really interesting question. I was going back and watching the first part of the season again these last few days, and it's funny how in the preseason we saw, you know, Bennett in the red zone, and we saw him in practice. Rodgers throwing it up to him quite a little bit in the end zone, but they didn't really do that almost ever in the regular season. I think Jimmy Graham is probably better suited to that area. Obviously, he had, I think of his 10 touchdowns, I think 6 or 7 were in the red zone last year. So, you know, I think he's definitely a target, and I think they'll definitely try and feature him, so to speak. But I don't think you'll ever see that kind of volume just because of the weapons they have. I mean, whether it's Devontae Adams, whether it's Mercedes Lewis, whether it's Randall Cobb, whether it's one of the guys out of the backfield, they've got plenty of options down there, and I don't think they're ever going to really feature a guy or you know, focus on a guy, especially the way Rodgers used to with Jordy Nelson. I think you'll see them spread it around quite a little bit. Now that said, between the 20s, I think you'll see him split out a lot and or in the slot. I don't think you'll see him in line a whole bunch. That's what Mercedes Lewis is for. And, you know, I think he'll be much more about affecting the offense, kind of like Jared Cook did. Obviously, he's not as fast as Cook was, but the kind of potential matchup problems he presents to defenses, I think that's where his value will come. I don't think he's ever going to be a high volume guy. I don't think he's going to be a fantasy darling. But I do think he will affect the game. Are both rookie cornerbacks better than Demarius Randall? If you're talking about the first 2 draft picks, Jair Alexander and Josh Jackson, right now as corners, it's impossible to say. I'll tell you what, Demarius Randall was playing very well down the stretch last year. I know no one wants to talk about that, judging by my Twitter mentions after he was traded, but he played very well down the stretch prior to sitting out that final game with injury. You know, these rookies have all the potential in the world, but until we see them on the field against NFL-level talent in pads, in game situations, it's all potential. It doesn't mean a whole lot. So, in the sense that Randall's at least proven he can do it, got to give the nod to Randall at this point. Your opinion on Mike Pettine coaching from upstairs as opposed to being on the field? I don't know. I know fans get caught up in that. It doesn't really mean one thing or the other. I understand the idea of having your defensive coordinator on the sideline, getting into guys, seeing guys, and, you know, feeding off the energy, et cetera, et cetera. But, you know, with a defensive coordinator wanting to see the field, so to speak, I totally get it why he wants to be up there. And again, this isn't rock solid. I know it's out there. It had been mentioned that he may coach from up in the box, but that has not been determined yet, as far as I know. So we'll see. I mean, it's to me, it's wherever that guy feels comfortable. And Pettine's proven that he knows A, what he's doing, and B, he's had some legit success as a defensive coordinator in the NFL. So I'm mostly going to acquiesce to whatever he wants to do and see how it works. What's up, Los Angeles? How will Wilkerson's presence affect linebacker play? Andrew, it should affect it somewhat. I'm not sure how much they're going to ask him to keep those guys clean, as opposed to asking him to, you know, blow up gaps and shoot gaps and just provide initial penetration. You know, every coordinator is different in that regard as far as their philosophies, and until we see exactly what they ask of those big guys up front, it's hard to say with any kind of certainty. But I do think you look at the heft of the guys up front there, whether it's, and the talent between Kenny Clark, Mike Daniels, Mo Wilkerson, that's a really, really talented group to help you keep those linebackers clean. Could really help Blake Martinez absolutely take it even another step. So we'll see. I think the addition bodes well, but let's see it on the field. Do you see Rodgers not holding the ball as long after the injury? No, not really, Justin. I think he'll come back and be the Aaron Rodgers we've gotten used to in the last decade. I think he'll get the ball out of his hands quick sometimes when he senses pressure. I think he'll elongate plays sometimes when he doesn't find anything open early. I think he'll turn down some early looks and extend the play, looking for a bigger play, as he is wont to do. I don't think we're going to see much different at all from Aaron Rodgers. Top 5 D-line? Whew, Chris, I don't know, man. It's a bit early for that. Ask me again in August. Is this the most talented roster we've had since the Super Bowl team? Very early for that question. Again, ask me again in, before the first preseason game when we've got at least a couple weeks of training camp under our belts. Does Rodgers need to start changing his game if he wants to play till 40 and beyond? Not necessarily. He definitely needs to get the ball out of his hands a little quicker on those rollouts outside. Now that he's done it twice and broken his collarbone twice, it seems to be a recurring theme here. But for the most part, I don't think so. As long as his legs are live and fresh, he should be okay. He can't quite get the corner the way he used to on some of those defensive tackles and defensive ends. He used to be able to outrun all those guys, and now you see those guys running him down a few more times than maybe when he was younger. But for the most part, he can play from the pocket, and his pocket sense and pocket presence and his ability to feel pressure and escape it, none of that has disappeared. And as long as he has that and he can get himself out of trouble and he can navigate the pocket, there's not a whole lot he needs to change. Now, I think without question, the Packers offense needs to rely less on Aaron Rodgers scrambling around making things happen. They need to get more on schedule, but that's not just on Aaron, that's on everybody. Are O-line positions up for grabs? I think right tackle is up for grabs, definitely. At least until Brian Bulaga is healthy enough to play, which I don't suspect will be right away. So I think, right tackle is your one spot where, that job is definitely up for grabs. Now, I think right guard technically is an open competition, but I do believe Justin McCray will win that job. Seattle, what's up? How you doing, James? He needs to drink more milk. Yes, Daniel. I'm sure he's been told that. 2018 stats on Aaron Jones. Chris, let's at least get through camp, man. Where do you think the Packers improved the most this offseason at defensive coordinator? I think the Brewers make the postseason? Len, I have no idea. How's the special teams looking? J.K. Scott doing a good job. Roll Tide and go Pack. Corbin, what's up, Alabama? Well, it's hard to get a read on special teams in the spring. J.K. Scott, though, has been booming them. There is no doubt about that. Now, that changes when there's pressure, when there's an actual snap and hold going on, when he's got to get that drop step and actually get the ball off in a certain amount of steps, if there's a pressure call, etc. All of that changes. But, as from a pure hitting standpoint, he's got a big leg. There's no doubt about that. How do you think the Packer offense matches up against the Minnesota defense? It's interesting. Talent-wise, I think you can't look at the Minnesota defense and take anything away from the talent level over there. They've done a great job of assembling a really fantastic roster on the defensive side of the ball, and offensively too, but especially on defense. They were the #1 defense in the league for a reason last year, there's no doubt, and they've obviously kind of tried to keep that core together. They've had a few key off-season signings or extensions this year. The addition of Sheldon Richardson, it's formidable. I think more so than the talent, though, I think Mike Zimmer has done a very good job of stymieing what Mike McCarthy and Aaron Rodgers like to do offensively. That goes back to his time in Cincinnati. I think Mike is able to create things and make things go when he has a talent superiority. We saw that early on in Zimmer's tenure, but I think now that Zimmer's got the better talent overall, Mike's having some issues, and it's going to be very interesting to see with this new playbook, new offensive playbook, this redesign, this back to basics, etc., whatever you want to call it, whatever they want to call it. I am very interested to see how they go about attacking Zimmer and the Vikings, because look, they predicate it all on having those two safeties back. They're able to stop the run with 4 up front, and they completely rough up the wide receivers at the line of scrimmage. And until the Packers, McCarthy, Rodgers, whoever, get a little bit more regular with, countering that and recognizing that it's coming. I know there's an aspect for every football coach of like, we're going to run our stuff and you're going to have to stop it. Well, the Vikings lately have done a really good job of stopping it. So whether that's more, bunch formations, whether that's more motion, whether that's more misdirection, I don't know. That's Mike's job to figure that out. But right now, I would definitely give the Vikings the upper hand. Bulaga update, nothing yet. We won't probably know anything on Bulaga until that first day of camp. That's when we should get injury updates on all the guys. Are we going to pick up any other free agents? Jacob, I would doubt it, but you never know. Maybe someone comes free as a salary cap casualty. But for the time being, they're at the 90-man limit. I think they'll go into camp with what they've got. Maybe if injuries strike, but I think this is your team for the time being. Who has the most approved this season? Ooh, good question, Manuel. Most approved on this Packers roster. It's funny. I think you could look at somebody like Randall Cobb, who has come under so much scrutiny. I think he would be a good candidate there. I don't think he has to prove anything, but I know a lot of the fan base does. And also, on the other side of the ball, I would look at Tramon Williams, who I have obviously talked up that signing. I think it's a great signing. I thought he played lights-out football down in Arizona last year. But you can't deny the age, the fact that he's, nearing the end of his career. And I think there are a lot of, not just fans, but I think there are people around the NFL and in the media as well who are a little suspect of that signing. And maybe think that the Packers are rolling out a retread there. So, yeah, I think both of those guys could do a lot to shut up the naysayers this year. Is Jake Ryan still a starter? Depends on the offense they're facing. If it's a power running game, I think, yeah, there's a good chance he is, at least early in the season. Everybody, I'm gonna leave it there. Thanks so much for all the questions. I'm sorry if I couldn't get to yours. I'll be back. Not sure if I'll be back tomorrow. Definitely won't be on July 4th, but I'll be back later in the week, barring any breaking news, obviously. In the meantime, make sure you're checking PackersNews.com for all the latest. I've got tons of opponent previews, anything else going on with the Packers. It's all there. Our positional previews will start up pretty soon. So make sure you're checking all that out. Thanks a lot, everyone. Have a great night.